It's Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers with tips and advice on landscaping and gardening. Here's Fernando Martinez.
Welcome, welcome. I am Fernando Martinez of Chaparral Pavers, and this is your wonderful gardening radio show right here, Patio Side Chats with Chaparral. And I got my partner with me today, full of energy, full of excitement, Mr. Jonathan Araya.
Good morning. How we doing today? Let's talk, and help some people get some beautiful backyards.
That's
and
right.
Front yards.
That's right. This is the place. We want to inspire you to keep your yard beautiful. We want you coming home to this gorgeous, wonderful place, either if it's an existing, landscaping with freshen it up, or if you want to do something new and just keep you really, keep your mind on it and remember, have you fertilized lately? Have you pruned? Do we need new plants? Is it something that needs to be addressed? And that's what this show is all about. We're here to get you out there and really enjoying your home.
I agree.
One of the biggest purchases you can make, one of the places where you spend a lot of time. I don't think there's any better place to spend money on, really.
I don't think so either, especially when most of the time you make money back.
Yeah, and it's sometimes it's for that if you're strictly thinking about the sale of a home, and other times it's just your quality of life.
Exactly.
I mean, you buy a little bit nicer car, you get that leather interior. It's your experience, if you come home and if it's a patio, maybe just upgrade it just slightly from a stamped concrete to pavers, or you go ahead and do that lighting system just to really make it more usable, more friendly, and to me, I think it's a better value for spending any money on it at all.
I agree, and a lot of the times we're talking about the fun, the sexy, the vibrancy of colors and options for a backyard.
Options, choices, colors. Yeah. It's so many on all products these days, and especially when it comes to landscaping.
I agree, but we don't really talk too much about functionality.
And that's one of the things I do want to talk about today is the kind of, it's almost like backstage, that crew that runs the show, and it's the unseen that goes, but it makes the whole show work. And that's
exactly. I don't know anybody that comes home at night and sees their lights on and then their sprinklers are on too and says, "Oh my gosh, those sprinklers are working sexy. They are looking good." I mean, the MP rotators look pretty good. Don't get me wrong. They look
cool,
but nobody does that. You just want to look at the after effect. Is my lawn green? Are my flowers blooming? Does everything look like it's receiving enough water?
Right. And that's one of the things. It's these things that are going on behind the scenes, the sprinklers, the grade, the drains, all these kind of unseen working items are super, super important. Grading and drainage are probably the two most important things when it comes to landscaping.
I agree. If you don't see it, it's probably something that's really, really important. I think of that, of the Disney effect. I know last week we talked about Disney, right, and how they do things. Disneyland is beautiful. Everybody would agree. It's like a dream when you're there. But nobody sees the landscapers, the plants that get replanted, the trash that gets cleaned. I read something that they buy over 10,000 brooms a year alone. So that to that effect, I totally see it.
I should have started a broom company or
exactly. Then we would have been making real money. Instead, we're losing money on the radio show.
Right. So here's the thing. Yeah, your free radio show. Right
free
here.
Radio show.
No, but it's this is good. This is kind of our way of giving back, and we want you, the better experience you have with your landscaping, the more you're thinking about it. To us, it's just, that's what we want. I wanted to provide a service here on Central Coast that could really help people get them having great experiences with their home, their family, their pets. And I know you want the same thing, Jonathan, and that's something that we're very passionate about here at Chaparral. So here's the thing about grading and drainage. You'll never think about it if it's right.
Exactly.
If it's done correctly and everything's working, why would you think about grading and drainage? It's just, you just don't. And that's when it's great. That's why it's the most important thing, and it's probably the least talked about thing. And I have a saying when we go on these appointments, and I just did it last week on a job that we're going to start over in Lompoc. And the customer was concerned about an area because the way their home was built, any water that got into the backyard, and I've seen this on several occasions, they've gotten a lot better about it these days with new homes, and a lot of times drainage is pre-installed. But there was literally nowhere for the water to go. It had to basically go into a box and have a pump put in there and had to be pumped out. I mean, that's like your worst case scenario. And it was just because concrete had been poured around the sides of the house over time. No one had ever really thought about it or addressed the grading there or the drainage or where the water in the backyard was going to go. So he was extremely concerned about it. We're going to put in a walkway there of pavers in an area where he has his French drains. So I want to talk about what a French drain is, what a real drain is, what grading is, and how all this stuff works. But in that particular case, we were going to be laying the sidewalk in right over the top of his French drain. And so he was super concerned about it. And I told him, I said, look, and I say this all the time at his appointments, this is the saying, it's like we do grading and drainage first. And more than anything else, as a landscape contractor, we do grading and drainage because whatever else we put on top is worthless if we don't get that right.
And I agree. And a lot of times with newer construction, when you're building a patio, you have to anticipate some sort of a drainage change. Something in the landscape is changing. You're going to have to readjust the drainage. So whatever swell was there when the manufacturer sold you the home, now things are going to be different. That you have a patio that's 20 feet by 15 feet. All of that is acting like a big sheet of just water flowing away from your home if it's done properly. Yeah. But it's got to go somewhere. And if it's going away from the home and you have issues with your soil where it doesn't drain very well, you're going to need a couple of drains in that area.
And that's the thing. You brought up a good point because a lot of the new homes, they have those giant swales in there. That's how your house comes. You're walking around the house and it's like this giant drainage ditch going around the backyard and out to the front, to the sides of the house, which is great if you're only talking about surface drainage. So let's talk about that for a second. Surface drainage is any water that would be on top of pavers, on top of a roof, on top of the ground that's not being absorbed into the soil. So that's surface drainage. Drains are taking water and, they're just drainage or drains, or I call them real drains, are solid pipes. They don't have any holes in them. There's no sock, no rock. There's no leaching out anywhere. They're actually collected in what's called catch basins. And you see them with the green lids on there or black lids, or sometimes they're steel. And the surface drainage has to guide and steer all that water into the catch basins. And then the catch basins are tied into pipes, usually 3-inch, 4-inch pipes that go underground. And then they get routed out to either the street or just before the sidewalk. And they're drained off to somewhere other than the property and away from the house, and either into the city drainage or the streets. Or maybe, there could be, like some pumps or boxes in certain cases, or other tying into bigger drainage systems. So French drain is the pipe with the holes and the sock and the rock. And they're probably my least favorite type of drains.
I would agree.
Because what they're trying to do is get water kind of into that pipe and then leach it out into the soil over a certain area. And they have a bunch of rock around them. Over time, soil and silt can get into the rock and kind of clog it, and then it can eventually get into the holes of the pipe and clog the pipe. And, you can put weed barrier around it. I see people putting weed barrier around French drains. The weed barrier can clog with silt, too.
Exactly. And I don't think that's a permanent fix. I think it's more of a temporary remedy. And what I mean by temporary is, 3 to 5 years, depending on how much silt and soil gets in that pipe. I mean, what if the corrugated, because it's usually corrugated pipe, gets crushed or punctured, and then all of a sudden there's a lot more dirt in there. It just isn't built properly.
Well, it's a last ditch solution. Yeah, it's exactly. Like when nothing else works and there's no other solution. Okay, do a French drain.
It's like the one we just did out in Lompoc. We did a project. And basically, it was a huge, what was it, 3 foot? It was supposed to be 3 feet. I think we went 2.5 feet in depth. It was a drainage basin, if you will, on the property, because a lot of cities now want it to where any new construction, you're taking care of the drainage and it's staying on the property as a last, effect or whatever.
Yeah, they're trying to keep the water out of the city and off of the city streets, and it is becoming more and more popular. And that's why even permeable pavers is another form of drainage.
Exactly.
So so it's not the best thing to think about or the funnest thing.
But I think you bring up a good point. If we can be responsible in the way that we build our landscapes to try to keep as much water on our own properties, I think it's going to contribute to a lot more. There's a lot of water harvesting going on nowadays here in the San Luis Obispo County.
That's another great point.
Water features that actually are dug down deeper, that you can actually harvest the water and use that water to water your garden and things of that nature, which will collect hundreds of gallons of water.
Absolutely.
And impermeable systems. I think that's what we're going to be going into here in the future.
Well, we're already there, and people are doing it. And here's the thing. When we talk about water and droughts and shortages and all these types of things, the soil is one of the best filters. It is the best filter in the world. Any water that gets into the soil and gets worked all through the dirt, through the rock, through the layers and layers of earth and gets down to the water table, it's clean water again. All the toxins, everything have been taken out of it. It's crystal clear, clean water once again. And into the water table. So the more water you can keep on your property and having it drain through the soil, you're just replenishing the water table. If we're taking all the water and putting it into the street, you're relying on the city drainage, or if it's a creek or a stream or something, it's just going to be going out to the ocean.
I agree.
So, it's interesting if you think about it. There's so many different topics that we could have, multiple radio shows on, but I think what I wanted to really stress was that if you're starting a new project, if you're doing an area that is going to be landscaped, think of that first. Where is that water going to go? So if you're putting in you have these concrete stoops that they give you when you get the new house. It's a little tiny thing. Well, they don't have to think a whole lot about creating a drainage for that. We come in and put the 20 by 40 patio. We have to think about that drainage. And now we've created a surface. You have to look at the surfaces as which ones are permeable and which ones are non-permeable. So a roof, for instance, would be not permeable water. And I think one of the first things that I look at when I walk around a job site is the rain gutter downspouts. So you're taking all that roof water and you're putting it into this pipe. And a lot of times, I don't know why these rain gutters guys or what they're thinking, they drain it all right out to the corner of the footing of your house. All the roof water is going to drain out right here.
Yeah.
And so it's like, I don't understand that. So what we like to do is put those into pipes, and hard pipes, and not porous ones or French drains or whatever, just real pipes and solid, and run them out and have all that roof water go away automatically. So now you've just cut out, because roof water, it's pure, there's nothing absorbing into the roof tiles at all. And then the pavers will absorb some, but very little really. And a lot of times I think it's a misconception about pavers. A lot of times people think the water is going to drain through the pavers, but there are such a thing as permeable pavers and non-permeable pavers. And there is a lot of sand in between the joints, and it's true some water will get through a lot more than would on a concrete surface. But it's not going to be a permeable, because it's going to fill up real quick, and it's going to be a lot of surface water coming off of that patio. So then what we do is when all that water is running away from the house, and we can talk about this whole 1/4 inch per foot, which sometimes people understand what that means and what it doesn't mean. Why don't you help us with that, Jonathan?
Yeah, so the 1/4 inch per foot, so you have water that's flowing. When everything is level, water's just going to stay stagnant. It's going to sit there. When you're building a patio and you're grading away from the house at a 1/4 inch per foot, you're saying that every 4 feet, you're going about an inch down. So you're grading everything down so that the water can go to a certain direction. A lot of the times we do it away from the home, but you can also set up your patio to where you have a designated drainage zone, if you will, where you can have all the water grade to that area.
Yeah, anything less than 1/4 inch per foot and you have a high likelihood of getting a puddle. So one of the main things that we're trying to avoid on a large patio is puddling. And secondly, most importantly, is that no water would actually go back towards the house. So what we're going to do right now is take a quick break, get a word from our sponsor, and we'll be right back to talk more drainage on the other side. If you're thinking about putting in a new Pavers patio or a paver driveway, call Chaparral Pavers, 805-588-6917. The best paver installer on the Central Coast. Check out their portfolio and customer reviews online. ILoveToComeHome.com. That's Chaparral Pavers, 805-588-6917. And on the web, ILoveToComeHome.com.
And we're back. Thank you, Chaparral. Alrighty, so we've just a quick recap. We've talked about drains, what type of drains. We talked about surface drains. We talked about actual drains in the ground that are plumbed to go out away from your property into the street. We also talked about French drains, which are permeable and release water on site on your property. We also talked about how to store water, how to filter water through the subsurface of your yard. So now let's get into some more meat and potatoes of projects, Fernando. What other tips, tricks do you have, ideas to improve your drainage? I think one of the highly recommended things from any landscape professional is going to be check your drains annually. Check them quarterly, as often as you can. Clear them out from silt, soil that stays in the basin, and make sure that they're still running. The best way to do this is to stick a hose in there, let the water run. One of the things, I just did this with a client on this week. We did the hose test, and I went out to the street and made sure the water ran clear. If the water is running murky, I know I'm going to have something
or running at all.
Issue. Yeah, or not running at all.
And so that's the thing. That's a great point. People don't think about your rain gutters being part of your landscaping. It absolutely 100% is. It's huge to the landscaping. Because it's not that thing that we're thinking about. It's that back, channel. It's those guys in the background working, the spotlight guys up on. You don't think about those guys when you're watching the show. And the landscaping, all the pretty stuff is the show. And the backdrop to that is the rain gutters, is the catch basins. And that the reason they're called catch basins is because they catch things. They catch the sediment. Because it's sometimes soil and leaves or compost or little dirts and things get stuck in the drains. And the top part of that catch basin looks like a screen, and it's supposed to catch the big stuff. And I've gone to properties where they call me and they have drainage issues, and believe it or not, all I did was clean the tops of the catch basins, and all of a sudden everything's working again. Super simple. The other thing is, if you don't clean the catch basins out, they stop working because now they're full of sediment. And now more.
They've already caught it.
And so more sediment gets in there, and it's going to go into the pipes, and then you get the dirty pipes, and then the pipes eventually will clog. So cleaning the rain gutters out, keeping those clean, will keep a lot of the debris. Putting screens at the edge of your rain gutters, where it goes down into the pipe. All those things are super important, especially if you have a lot of trees, a lot of leaves and debris, trying to get in there. They'll clog up that drain system, not only for the rain gutters, but if your surface drains and that are out in the landscape are also tied into that same system, they'll be clogged. So a lot of people, if you lived at your house, for a number of years, and people stay 4, 5, 6, 7 years at a home, where it's been long enough to get a rainy season or two. Sometimes it's hard to tell around here because it barely rains, but
right.
Where the puddling is, where the tendencies are. I can spot it just being a professional in the industry I see little black mold or rings, or, you can kind of see where low spots are and where water's going to want to sit. And those are the areas that you're going to have a drainage there or have it be addressed. Water features, if you put in a pond or you put in, an underground basin or something, that's not permeable. Well, when it rains and rains and rains, it's going to be catching a lot of water there. You should have a drain there. So cleaning the drains out, thinking about, where they need to be. If you're running, that new patio and you're creating a new drainage, issue, even if you have beautiful 1/4 inch per foot fall and everything, you're steering all that water and maybe even the roof. If the roof water is coming off and you've got a downspout kicking out onto your patio, you've got all that surface and that patio water kicking off into an area, you're going to have make sure that you put a catch basin there and drainage there. And so those things are super, super important.
I agree. So
let me say one more thing before we finish up on that particular subject, is that the testing of them is the easiest way, and just check. And we do this on the job sites all the time, even bidding sometimes, or before we start, to make sure that things are working. And it's simple. Garden hose. What I've done is I'll take the garden hose, put it at the top of the rain gutter, let it go into that downspout, and walk around the yard. Let's see where it comes out. Sometimes you don't remember, like, where does this drain end, and a lot of our clients, because again, you're not thinking about it all the time. If it's working, no problem. Remember the one we did up in San Luis Obispo? We were trying to get the drains to come down, and we were pouring water, and it was like it wasn't coming out anywhere. Well, it turned out that on the back of her house, there was a hill going down, and someone had put a drain there previous to her, rocks all around it, and weeds and grasses and all kinds of things had grown over. And it took 15, 20 minutes, and all of a sudden there was a wet spot there, and we ended up clearing all that soil and dirt and weeds and plant material away so it could drain freely. And now you know exactly where that water drains out. Catch basins, same thing. And so you can clean them out. You can stick the hose in there. And sometimes if you see that dirty water coming out at the end, what I do is I'll take the hose and you fill it up, turn it on full blast, and you can actually use it like a snake. And the plumbers come and they snake out a thing. I just run the hose in there and push it in there as far as you can on full blast and cleaning it out. So that should be done periodically. And what I like to do is right before the rains. When the rainy season is, or if they're predicting a heavy rainy season, go around, clean the rain gutters out, run the water hose in there, check the outlets to make sure they're free and clean of debris, put the hose in the catch basins, make sure you know where everything's coming out. And if you're not sure, you can simulate drainage. We do it all the time. I said, I'm not sure where the water's going to sit. Well, okay, let's turn the hose on, let it run on the patio for 10, 15 minutes. Where's the water collecting? That's where the drain needs to go. And another thing that we haven't talked about too much is that when we're re-landscaping and regrading, that's why grading and drainage is tied together. It sometimes doesn't matter where that low spot is now, because we're changing that and we're having control of that. The only thing that I'm talking about today is to do that first before you plant, before you put the patio down, before you do the water features, so that everything makes sense and will work and last a long time. And that's what we're all about. So what I'd like to talk about more is some more decorative types of...
so your more decorative types of drainage for aesthetic purposes, other ways that we can do it besides tying in pipes underground is to create kind of a channel, if you will, out of boulders, rocks, and they're more commonly known as dry creeks, in essence. And we're able to kind of channel all the water of these dry creeks and have this be kind of a surface drain out to a certain area, or even a surface drain from one part of the yard out to where your actual drain is at another portion of the yard. So,
or it could even end. You could create boulders and kind of raised up, and then you kind of carve it out to be that natural creek-looking shape, putting all the rock on there and guiding the water. And the end of the dry creek could be a catch basin right there, and steer all the water. That could help you create that surface drainage, guide that water to an actual drain, and have it still look gorgeous and accentuate there. Another thing that we like to do is put rock around the drains.
Yeah, that's a great point. Rock around the drains don't only help aesthetically, but it actually acts as a natural filtration system to keep dirt and debris out of your drainage area. So if there are a bunch of leaves that collect there, you're actually able to just swoop them up with your hand before they reach the drainage basin.
And it keeps the silt down.
Exactly.
Or if you have bark, a lot of people have bark in their yards, and then they have bark around the catch basin. So you could be out there right now with a beautiful landscape, drains, everything gorgeous, and when it rains, your bark will collect on top of that grate or that filter, that green, and you know what? You can change the colors of them. A lot of times they're green, they can be black, they can be a sand color. And when the bark collects on the top of that, a really good, simple project you could do is get a bucket of rock, put that around that grate, maybe 6-8 inches a foot out all the way around. You can make a shape. It doesn't have to be a circle. And that will prevent a lot of the bark from getting anywhere near that. And you won't have to clean out or clean off those grates as often. And it can be a decorative item. It could be cobblestones. It could be browns. You could have river rocks. You could do pea gravel, and you could have fun with a simple little project like that and protecting your catch basins from getting silt in them.
I agree. On that note, talking about silt,
yeah,
let's talk about the drainage types on soil.
Yeah, different types of soils.
Yeah, different types of soils and how they drain. You have clay, sand, silt. They all drain differently.
Absolutely, and we have to even think about a lot of times doing pavers because, we're Chaparral Pavers and we do a lot of that. Is the subgrade underneath affects everything that we put in on top, the road base and the sand. So even if you're putting in pavers or flagstone, if you're doing what types of plants are going to want to grow in those soils, you have to be aware and know what types of soils you have and how they act with water. So you're absolutely right. It is a key part of drainage.
And I think with a lot of the newer homes where they're heavily compacted, the subsurface is just smashed and you don't have that loam, that perfect mix of all those soil types kind of combined together. So what happens is when you go outside of your backyard a couple days after it rains, you're just feeling that squishy feeling on the bottom of your feet.
And it can get on your boots. That's one way to know what type of soil you have is walk across that soil when it's wet.
Yeah.
If you just grow, 2-3 inches in height because all the clay is stuck to your boots, that's the type of soil you have. If it drains super fast, you probably have a sandy soil.
So how do we address the soils that are horrible at drainage with drainage?
And that's a great question because if you have sandy soil, drains great, awesome, doesn't grow plants as well because it can't hold the water. So you add compost. You can, amend that soil so that it will retain water. So in some cases, you're trying to retain water in soils. Other types of soils, which we have a lot, Solvang, we have Rio Grande, I've seen even Lompoc, San Luis Obispo, and it just, even within the same city or an area, there could be heavy clay soils in one area, and there could be sandy soils in other areas. So you're absolutely right. When the builders come in and they compact because they're thinking of building and they want the footings to be strong and they're compacting everything. If you have clay soils that are highly compacted, it's extremely hard to get water to drain through that. So put in the drains first, address all the 1/4 inch per foot fall, everything away from the house. But then if the soil is staying wet for a long time, you can add sand to that soil. You can add compost, believe it or not. It helps with drainage and water retention. And we've talked with Bob Engel about that quite a bit. And also there's a product called gypsum that you can put down and it will actually get down in between the little layers of clay, which are like plates that want to flatten out and go on top of each other. And that gypsum gets down kind of in between there and allows the water to drain through and it allows that soil to dry out a little bit faster. But really, compost is one of the best things you can add to clay soils, sandy soils, even loam type soils that are perfect. You always need a little bit more organic matter and the microorganisms and all that living, growing things that'll help the plants, helps the drainage, helps filter the water. So really, it's that's just one of the best things you can do in combination with everything else that we're talking about on the drains and everything. So
perfect. Well, I think we've come to a close at that. Let's let this information percolate and drain through their minds.
Yeah, hopefully we've inspired you to clean your rain gutters out. Not the funnest project, but it is important in the long run. And if you've taken the time and energy and money to go out there and do that, it'll help. So catch us on the web at ilovetocomehome.com. We'll see you next time.
This has been Patio Side Chats with Fernando Martinez from Chaparral Pavers. Go to ilovetoComeHome.com to find out more or call 805-588-6917. And be sure and tune in next week at this same time for Patio Side Chat here on KSMA.